Do you think that Harry ever looks back and think that he's got it wrong?
I like to think so.
Yeah.
I think in the middle of the night sometimes he must wake up in a cold sweat and think, my God, what have I done? Perhaps he doesn't, perhaps he genuinely believes he's still on the right path, but I think in certain moments he must regret, being estranged from his own family, trying to help him to get back in with his family, and he's not helping her to get back in with her family.
Exactly,
I mean,
so
if I was Harry, who's never met Thomas Markle, you'd think he'd sort of say to, well, let's try and patch this up.
I mean, that is an embarrassment. That is shocking.
They've never met and he's never met the grandchildren. I just think it's
scandalous. And you went on the BBC to whinge about your father not talking to you. What about the grandfather of your children?
Surprising that Geoffrey had a close working relationship with Meghan and still has a working relationship with Meghan.
Before Meghan was Duchess of Sussex, she was Briefcase number 24, a soap extra, and a Hollywood hustler. But now, that version of her has vanished, scrubbed, deleted, because not every royal loves the spotlight on their real origin story. Meghan Markle didn't grow up in a castle. She grew up on a soundstage. Before the palaces and pearls, her kingdom was a production lot, and the throne she knew best was the director's chair, where her father, Thomas Markle, ruled as the lighting director for Married with Children. This wasn't just any sitcom. It was the risqué, raunchy, politically incorrect cultural earthquake of its time, one that became infamous for its portrayal of over-the-top characters, absurd sexual innuendos, and its shameless objectification of women.
And he tells us the marriages sound great. I hope it is for them, but there's no reason why he had to go to the extremes that he did, in my opinion. And
Meghan, she was right there, front row to it all. Forget tea with the Queen. Young Meghan was having snacks in the makeup trailer while women in lingerie rehearsed lines across the stage. She wasn't just visiting once or twice. She was a regular, still wearing her Catholic school uniform as she sat off stage watching takes and rewrites. The irony isn't lost on those who recall her later moral criticisms of the show's content, because in those formative years, it wasn't just tolerated, it was normalized. That set was her playground, her second home, her behind-the-scenes classroom. The entertainment industry wasn't some distant dream for Meghan. It was dinner table conversation, cameras, call sheets, stage lighting. These were the building blocks of her childhood. And while she has gone on to publicly disavow the over-sexualized imagery and tropes she grew up around, that world didn't seem to repel her at the time. Quite the opposite. It felt natural. She may have claimed she didn't dream of becoming an actress, but her early life reads like a slow audition for fame.
I think he regrets it, but he doesn't care enough to do anything about it because he just thinks, what's the point? And I don't think if he said to Meghan, let's try and make things right and get back into the fold,
By the time she scored her first on-screen appearance on General Hospital, it didn't come as a surprise to anyone who knew the layout of her life. Her father was already working behind the scenes, and like magic, opportunity appeared. A role here, a walk-on there, quiet nudges in the right direction from people who knew her last name before they knew her resume. It wasn't blatant nepotism, but let's just say the red carpet was already being unrolled long before she'd earned her place on it. The truth is, Meghan didn't claw her way into Hollywood from the outside. She was born inside the machine, groomed by its rhythms, shaped by its priorities. She knew what lights to stand under and when to smile. And from that very first childhood set, she learned something far more important than how to act. She learned how to be seen.
She doesn't make any real efforts to kind of get back in the good graces of her family. Maybe it's not worth it.
She's not trying to help him to get back in with his family,
exactly,
and he's not helping her to get back in with her family.
Exactly,
If I was Harry, who's never met Thomas Markle...
Before she was sipping tea in royal gardens, Meghan Markle was holding a briefcase on national television, and she's made it very clear she'd like you to forget that. Yes, long before royal titles and palace scandals, Meghan was briefcase girl number 24 on Deal or No Deal. Dressed in a tight dress, high heels, and a pageant-ready smile, she stood under the hot stage lights waiting for a contestant to pick her number. But in hindsight, Meghan doesn't look back fondly. She's publicly dismissed the job as objectifying, insisting she felt reduced to her looks, her intellect irrelevant, her presence cosmetic. But that narrative? It rubbed more than a few people the wrong way.
We know that Harry had fallen out with his brother. That kind of happens in siblings. There's a bit of rivalry going on there, or that Meghan didn't get on with Catherine. There was a bit of a difference in culture. There was a difference in the way they kind of lived their lives, etc. And we kind of see, okay, they fell out. But falling out with Queen Elizabeth II.
While Meghan framed the experience as demeaning, her fellow suitcase girls had a very different memory. Many described it as empowering, a launch pad, not a cage. And while the show certainly wasn't Shakespeare, it wasn't the degrading experience Meghan painted it to be either. Some whispered that Meghan wasn't pushed out by sexism, she was simply passed over. Behind the scenes, it's rumored she had her sights set on Deal or No Deal host Howie Mandel as a potential gateway to bigger roles. But when Mandel's wife allegedly sensed Meghan was getting too close for comfort, Meghan's spot on the show was suddenly up for grabs. She says she quit. Insiders say she was quietly removed. Either way, she didn't get the happy ending she wanted. And just like that, the job that objectified her was a closed chapter. But Deal or No Deal wasn't the only performance she's buried under the glitter of royal life.
Okay, they fell out. But falling out with Queen Elizabeth II.
Let's talk about 90210. Meghan snagged a blink and you miss it cameo in the pilot of the CW reboot. Her character? A college student was caught in a compromising position inside a parked car. There were no long speeches, no girl power monologue, just a very awkward, very visual moment, the kind that doesn't get listed on official bios or spoken about in interviews. It's one of those roles that gets left in the shadows, buried under the sparkle of Suits and the Duchess title that followed. But for anyone digging into her Hollywood past, it's right there in the credits. Risqué and unforgettable.
To do things right, he would be sufficiently threatened and intimidated.
And who could forget the Tostitos commercial? Yes, there was a time when Meghan was selling tortilla chips on daytime TV, except the brand didn't even trust her voice. Her thoughts were dubbed over with a chirpy narrator who voiced Meghan's inner dialogue like a high school diary entry. It was sugary, forgettable, and painfully cheesy. A paycheck gig, sure, but definitely not one you'd expect on the Duchess of Sussex's resume. And definitely not the kind of role you reminisce about when you're curtsying before the Queen. Then came the crime victim dressed as a Disney princess on Castle, the fleeting moments on CSI, Miami, the blink and you miss it face in Get Him to the Greek. All micro roles that gave her screen time, but not stardom. She was grinding, like most actresses do, bit by bit, role by role. No headlines, no glam squads, just the daily Hollywood hustle.
Into either not coming or getting ill. And of course, he got ill and then couldn't come. So I think the way she has behaved.
So how did she manage to float through Hollywood without the typical side hustle? Some say talent. Others point to connections to the right social circles, the right mixers, the right names on her phone. Whatever the case, Meghan never scraped by. She played the game and made sure she looked good doing it.
It was my final year of university. I was in a giant park. And much like the public, I think, the Queen thought Meghan was a breath of fresh air, very intelligent, very well-spoken, obviously, from her.
Still, as she soared higher as Suits finally gave her a spotlight, those early roles quietly vanished from her narrative. All were left behind like discarded costumes. But Hollywood has a long memory, and the internet never forgets. And somewhere, deep in the vaults of daytime television, Briefcase number 24 is still standing by. Before there was a prince, there was a producer. While the world fawned over Meghan Markle's fairy tale entrance into the royal family, one chapter from her past was carefully edited out, almost like it never existed. A chapter that didn't involve tiaras, royal carriages, or worldwide headlines. Instead, it began on the sun-soaked streets of Los Angeles, far from the gates of Buckingham Palace, with a man named Trevor Engelson. They met in 2004. Meghan, a young actress trying to carve her place in Hollywood. Trevor, an ambitious producer already making quiet waves with his own production company. Their romance bloomed not under chandeliers and royal titles, but in the gritty, caffeine-fueled world of LA hustle. He supported her, believed in her, and stood by her side through the uncertain years of auditions and bit parts. Then came the breakthrough. In 2010, Meghan landed Suits, a sleek, stylish legal drama that changed everything. Suddenly, the actress who'd been in commercials and forgotten TV pilots had a leading role. And in 2011, she and Trevor tied the knot in Jamaica, not in a regal cathedral, but barefoot on a beach.
As her ambassadors throughout the Commonwealth, and so they were going to go all over the world, and they started off doing that, and she thought they'd be absolutely fantastic. But, you know, sadly, I have to say, I have to disagree with you. I just don't think she ever intended to stay in the royal family. I think
The wedding was the opposite of royal. Beer coolers, barbecue grills, laughter, and laid-back games like wheelbarrow races. Meghan's Suits co-stars were there, smiling under the Caribbean sun. It was real, unpolished, joyful, and very, very unroyal. And yet today, you'd struggle to find a trace of it, not because it was unremarkable, but because Meghan made sure it disappeared. The official wedding video, destroyed, candid photos, scrubbed, even casual mentions in interviews or features, silenced. She didn't just close the book on Trevor. She tossed it in the fire and made sure no one saw the ashes. Why? Because the royal image she was carefully curating years later didn't have room for a sandy, sweaty first wedding. It didn't fit the narrative of the elegant, dignified Duchess. Meghan's past with Trevor was normal, and in her new world, normal wasn't good enough. But if you ask people who knew them, Trevor wasn't the problem. Far from it. He was supportive, generous, and patient. Even when Meghan's success pulled her toward Toronto and long filming schedules, he adjusted. He kept the long distance going, hoping it was just a phase, that once the show settled, their lives would return to normal. But as Meghan's star rose, her priorities shifted, her weekends became booked, her visits to LA grew rare. Work was always the excuse, and when cracks began to show, they did what couples do. They tried to fix it. A trip to Vietnam was meant to reignite the spark. But somewhere between airport lounges and table reads, Meghan had made her decision, and when it came time to end it, she didn't pick up the phone. She didn't send a long email or a heartfelt letter. She shipped her wedding ring back in a FedEx envelope. No note, no explanation, just a cold, impersonal package that landed on Trevor's doorstep like a punch to the gut. A man she had spent over a decade with, from her struggling years to the edge of fame, was cut out of her story with all the warmth of a business transaction. He was blindsided, devastated.
I think he regrets it, but he doesn't care enough to do anything about it because he just thinks, what's the point? And I don't think if he said to Meghan, let's try and make things right and get back into the fold, I mean...
Friends say he was shattered, left trying to piece together what had just happened. But Meghan? She was already on the move, focused forward, treating her past like a rough draft she didn't want anyone to read. That Jamaican wedding didn't just get left behind, it was deliberately erased. Guests from the ceremony remembered it vividly. Meghan glowing in the sun, laughter echoing over the ocean, her Suits castmates dancing barefoot in the sand. It was a celebration of love, youth, and freedom, the kind of event people bring up in nostalgic toasts years later. But not Meghan. The wedding video, reportedly charming, candid, and beautifully shot, was never allowed to see daylight. Meghan made sure of that. She didn't just want to move on from the past.
Trying to help him to get back in with his family,
Exactly,
and he's not helping her to get back in with her family.
Exactly,
I mean,
so...
if I was Harry, who's never met Thomas Markle, you'd think he'd sort of say to, you know, well, let's try and patch this up.
I mean, that is an embarrassment. That is shocking.
They've never met, and he's never met the grandchildren. I just think it's
scandalous. And you went on the BBC to whinge about your father not talking to you. What about the grandfather of your children?
She wanted to bury it. There were rumors she even asked friends not to share photos or speak publicly about the marriage. That casual beach ceremony didn't match the princess narrative, and it certainly didn't flatter the image she was polishing in the years to come. And as her name inched closer to royalty, Meghan began rewriting the script. Trevor Engelson went from being her husband and creative confidant to someone not even worth a footnote. Media profiles barely mentioned him. Royal introductions ignored him altogether. It was as if he had never existed. And even Meghan's old social circle felt the shift. Once she stepped into the royal bubble, she stopped looking back. Friends who stood beside her barefoot in Jamaica say they never heard from her again. The new Meghan didn't just change her title, she changed her tribe. That wasn't just evolution, that was a strategic disappearance. Trevor Engelson, the man who cheered her on in Hollywood, who stood by her through rejection, who planned a wedding that was everything she once wanted, became a ghost in the royal machine.
Intend on staying, and
I think
she's isolated Harry from her family, from his family, and now we are where we are. And
I do think Harry
sad.
should take a lot of the blame, though, because if you look at William's approach to his relationship with Catherine, he was very cautious. They dated for 10 years.
No interviews, no comments, no receipts, just a ring in an envelope, and a chapter the Duchess made sure was never reprinted. Sometimes it's not the headlines that tell the story, it's the accessories. Long after Meghan Markle had cut ties with Trevor Engelson, long after she had FedExed his ring back like a refund receipt, there was still one thread left dangling, a delicate gold Cartier bracelet he had gifted her. And what makes it fascinating isn't just the jewelry itself, it's the fact that she kept wearing it. In photos taken months, even years after the breakup, Meghan can be seen with that bracelet snugly around her wrist.
He was not a very wise person, and I don't think he chose someone who was culturally a very good fit for the institution. And in Meghan's mind, she probably just thought, actually, this isn't for me. And leaving was not something that was much of a problem for her, because I don't think she had that kind of ties to it, emotional connection to the institution in the first place.
On red carpets, at fashion events, in Suits promo shots, while playing Rachel Zane, the sharp paralegal with a perfect wardrobe and even more perfect instincts, Meghan's real-life accessory quietly remained. She didn't mention it. She didn't flaunt it, but she didn't take it off either. And that says everything. Meghan isn't careless about optics. Every outfit, every appearance, every detail is considered. So the choice to keep wearing a bracelet from a man she had so thoroughly erased from her story wasn't accidental. It was calculated. The girl who vanished an entire wedding video wasn't the type to overlook a piece of jewelry she wore constantly. Which begs the question, why keep it? Some believe it was sentimental, a quiet attachment to a love she once had, a tether to simpler days before the royal glare. Others think it was a strategy. After all, Cartier doesn't just scream luxury, it whispers legacy. Meghan was climbing the social ladder, one elegant outfit at a time, and the bracelet added the kind of old money polish that no stylist could fabricate. It gave her a look of established refinement, a woman already living in the lifestyle she was manifesting.
Making a pretty good go of their marriage, because I suppose in their mind, they're kind of trauma bonded. It's like them against the world. Like everyone wants to see us break up. So like they're just making a good go of it. But it's really unfortunate how things panned out. And I think ultimately Harry was very unwise from the beginning, and he was a bit desperate, need I say. I think he couldn't believe his luck that he's bagged this beautiful American actress. He was just going to do anything to keep her.
In a world where perception was power, even a bracelet could be part of the plan. And maybe, just maybe, it was also a message, silent but pointed. Trevor, for all his absence in her words, still left an imprint on her public image. While Meghan moved on without looking back, the gold he gave her clung to her wrist like a forgotten subtitle. She didn't need to say his name. The bracelet said it for her. It's the kind of detail most people miss. A flash of metal under a jacket cuff, a glint in a photo shoot, but it lingered, quiet, persistent, ironic, because while Meghan built a new narrative and curated a new life, she wore a daily reminder of the man who never made it into the final chapter. Sometimes, what you leave behind says less than what you choose to keep. By the time Meghan Markle found herself inching toward tiaras and palace gates, something subtle but striking began to happen. The story started to shift. Gone was the girl raised on Hollywood sets, the one who watched lingerie-clad actresses rehearse on Married with Children after Catholic school. Gone was the actress who'd hustled through red carpets, styled her own photo ops, and learned the rhythms of celebrity PR before she ever became a household name. In her place emerged a new version, polished, poised, and mysteriously unfamiliar with the very world she had been molded by. Suddenly, Meghan was just a quiet woman with a simple life. A woman who, by her own account, didn't know much about the royal family. A woman who claimed she didn't Google Prince Harry before dating him. A woman who said she never thought about fame, even though she'd spent over a decade working toward it.
And probably the two most popular royals that we had at the time. I just think that she worked her whole life, trying to make sure that the monarchy succeeded after her, and the legacy was the most important thing to her, and the Commonwealth, of course, as well. And it must have been absolutely heartbreaking for her to see, A, what was happening with Prince Andrew, and B, what was happening with Harry and Meghan leaving.
It was a subtle reframing, but a powerful one. This wasn't just a fresh start. It was a narrative reset. Meghan was no longer a Hollywood insider. She was an innocent outsider, wide-eyed and overwhelmed by the world of aristocracy and attention. It was the perfect underdog origin story for her new role, the self-made Duchess, the reluctant celebrity, the woman who gave it all up for love. But the cracks in that version were hard to ignore, because Meghan hadn't just brushed up against the entertainment industry, she'd lived in it. She knew its language. She understood media cycles, branding, timing, and how to work a camera. She had publicists before she had a prince. She had magazine shoots and headline placements long before her royal debut. And perhaps most telling of all, she was media trained long before her engagement. And then came the whispers, the ones that made her rebrand look less like evolution and more like strategy. Some say Meghan had mapped out her rise long before she ever crossed paths with royalty. One widely circulated screenshot, allegedly taken from a teenage Meghan's online profile, reads like something out of a manifesto. "When I am rich and famous, when I write my life story, I will talk about you and the school. You'll be known worldwide." Whether that message was innocent teenage dreaming or a prophetic peek into a master plan is up for debate. But it raises a question that continues to hover around Meghan's fairy tale like a shadow. Was all of this just destiny falling into place? Or was it all by design? For someone who claimed she had no interest in royalty, she adapted to it with striking speed. The wardrobe, the posture, the media choreography. She didn't fumble through it, she nailed it. To the public, Meghan became a woman swept into a life she never asked for. But behind the scenes, she had been walking toward the spotlight for years, perhaps not toward a specific man, but toward a very specific image. And when the palace doors finally opened, she didn't hesitate. She walked through them like she'd known they'd open all along. By now, the world has memorized one version of Meghan Markle, the Duchess in designer gowns, the polished speaker in carefully lit interviews, the victim-turned-visionary who claimed the royal family never protected her, that the media hounded her, and that no one understood what she gave up. But dig a little deeper, and another version of Meghan emerges, one far less manicured, far more human, and far harder to control. This version isn't the Duchess of Sussex. She's the woman who ghosted her father, the same man who lit her childhood sets and helped build her Hollywood dreams, only to be cut off without a second thought the moment he no longer fit the brand. When tabloids came knocking and family secrets spilled into the press, Meghan didn't run to defend him. She ran the other way. She was built in the glare of studio lights, not royal chandeliers. Her story began on sitcom sets, in cramped dressing rooms, and at open casting calls where she fought to stand out. She learned early how to navigate the industry, when to smile, when to pivot, when to disappear, and when to shine. This wasn't a girl who stumbled into fame. This was a woman who studied it, through every bit part, every forgotten line, every Hollywood brush-off. She crafted a persona, she learned the game, and then she mastered it. Meghan didn't just want success. She wanted narrative control, and when she finally met Prince Harry, she didn't walk into the royal world wide-eyed and innocent. She walked in with intent, and she brought the rewrite with her. She reshaped the origin story. She reframed the past. She buried the parts that didn't sparkle. But here's the twist. The people who knew her before the pearls and palaces, they remember. The girl on the beach in Jamaica, the actress clutching a briefcase on stage, the ambitious woman who once blogged about fashion and fame, long before she claimed to shun it. They didn't forget who she was, because the world didn't erase Meghan's past. She handed them the eraser. And somewhere behind the crown, behind the carefully curated image, behind the palace-approved press releases, that original Meghan still exists. The hustler, the strategist, the woman who knew exactly what she wanted and wasn't afraid to transform to get it. It's a remarkable story, but it's not a fairy tale. It's Hollywood. And in Hollywood, the best roles are the ones you write for yourself. They erase the past, but receipts never lie. Meghan's crown may shine, but the climb to get it was anything but clean.